I didn't watch a video or watch a documentary or read a book about environmental injustice because I saw it happening right in my own backyard. And that has been my driving force for ensuring that people who look like me are continuously included in conversations and decision-making processes when it comes to issues pertaining to climate change.
Born and raised in Colombia, in Bogota, the most beautiful place in the world. A lot of people call it the heart of the world. One of the top countries in the world for sweetwater reserves, like this alpine tundra. They're like sponges, basically, the world's sponges. A bunch of graffiti around the city that was like, we cannot drink gold because they were trying to make a gold mine, this UK company. That means that these ecosystems will start to shrink and shrink and shrink until there's nothing more. I remember the point where I was like, oh, wow, my mom's house is going to be underwater no matter what we do at this point. It was just a really big moment for me to be like, actually, this will affect my home the hardest.
Climate change is very evident in that you see it occurring every single day. Right now in Kenya, there is an ongoing drought that is putting millions at risk of extreme and unforgiving hunger. The president declared drought a national emergency, and that is just one of the most evident impacts of the climate crisis in Kenya. Unpredictable weather patterns. For a really long time, farmers could be able to tell this is the rainy season is this month and this month. But if they're not able to plan very well, then it affects the supply of food in the country.
People know about climate change, but living the realities like Trinidad and Tobago, this dry season and wet season not making any sense. A couple of weeks ago, we had hail, a thunderstorm. We get random water spouts coming off in Tobago. So we see the difference and we may not fully understand it, but we're living it.
I started volunteering as a wildlife volunteer, as an environmentalist, and what I saw was a lot of, deforestation, a lot of poaching. It's a completely different kind of world. Some of them don't even have a word for climate change. They thought they were being punished for the sin, which is like really heartbreaking because, some of them are very spiritual people. It's climate change and the patterns are changing. It's people from the global north who are causing all these emissions.
Well, some activists are not voiceless, just as that we are unheard. Most marginalized people and most impacted people are suffering severely from the impacts of climate change that are currently taking place. People who have contributed less to the climate crisis, yet these countries and these people are being affected most.
The people united can never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. System change or climate change. System change or climate change.
The global climate movement is a very privileged movement as it is right now. It's very Eurocentric, I must say, and Europe being the center of privilege and the stronghold of the global climate movement. It comes with a lot of privilege that is exclusive to people in global south countries. It comes bearing things like striking, the inability to strike in Kenya because it is very dangerous. While striking it is a right, it is a privilege in many countries that many cannot afford. For the people in MAPA, most affected people and areas, their voices are needed most because their voices bear the brunt of what the reality of the climate crisis is. But as a result of racial profiling in their countries or very colonialist police systems, they are not able to, as that is a standard in the global climate movement. Striking becomes by default exclusive.
Climate justice is a right, not just for the rich and white. Climate justice is a right, not just for the rich and white. Climate justice is a right, not just for the rich and white. Tell me, can you hear it? Getting stronger by the hour. Stronger by the hour. Power. People.
The fact that we've been talking about this, advocating for this, a lot of Pakistani activists, they just accept it and they know that they'll probably never ever get to speak at events like that, and they're never probably ever going to be featured on any international media outlet. And we don't get to do those fancy things. We don't get to go and fight for climate justice and have our voices be heard. It's not that we are voiceless, it's just that we are unheard.
As someone in Kenya, I'm still struggling to get hard even within the movement itself. As it is, we need to get more revolutionary to radicalize the movement, because at the moment, I don't believe that any change would be coming from world leaders at this point. Even like at COP26, this is the 26th Conference of Parties. One too many and no action, just empty promises. I am going to COP26 not because I am expecting change or meaningful commitments. I am going to COP26 because I want to see firsthand as world leaders screw lives of our own communities in the global south.
The accessibility isn't there. Not only is it too expensive, but it's also not built for them. There's no infrastructure to bring frontline communities to the table when decisions are being made that are directly affecting their communities. It almost feels like it was done purposefully. It almost feels like they were actively prevented from attending.
The way it is now, I don't have hope, but I don't like to say I don't have hope, but I don't have hope. COP and people who go there are still too far removed from the invisible majority of the world. They have lived in a world that demonstrated sometimes it's actively trying to kill me. So while I'm here, I'm going to be a good person. I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to try to make a change, and I'm not scared to die. I'm not scared to risk it all.
When Paris Agreement happened, being 17, it was like, oh, solved, sorted, great, like awesome. To be, it was like, oh, this is pretty sorted then. Yeah, it sort of obviously became very clear that that was never going to be the case. At this point, I think my understanding from having conversations with people, but especially organizing across borders, even the idea of being okay with what that space represents, let alone whether they're effective or they're actually meaning business or like they're actually going to do something about it. The legitimacy of this space, it's a legitimacy based on violence, right? And it's a legitimacy based on absolute exclusion and exploitation at every single level. My engagement before was, oh, it's going to be sorted, and now the only thing that can actually be sorted is like creating those actual spaces of decision making and visibilizing and actually like starting to create the people's power based on like people's legality, but also like on people's education. In 6 years, and we're still waiting for the answer to come from above instead of being like, well, actually, that's not going to work anymore. Where do young people fit into this? We've been through 14 plus years of an education system that has fundamentally taken away from our capacity to understand ourselves as active people that are able to take decisions. We've just been stood at the brunt of this entirely hierarchical way of thinking. It's no wonder that we're like, fuck, COP, yes. That might very well only be urban people, like urban young people across the world having that perspective, whereas young people from communities who have fought for their own liberation, their own self-determination and autonomy, they know that the most relevant thing for them is to organize in their community. The really big question is, how do we get young people on that journey? How do we get young people to understand that the climate crisis isn't only about like dropping emissions, but like fundamentally rethinking and remaking the way politics is done? Young people have the capacity to show the alternatives to power that we actually need. It's not about challenging power, it's about creating a completely different way of engaging with power and way of being powerful.
What do we want? Climate justice! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Climate justice! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Climate justice!
COP26, I really saw the need of there to be more voices over there. Very few people who are actually on the grassroots, who have done actual grassroots work and who are dealing with the climate crisis. So I tried to get my fellow activists who are doing amazing work, and we tried to apply as much as we can. We really tried, but then nothing came through. I would want to go, but personally it's very expensive. Imagine for me, I'm living in the UK. I have more privileges than my fellow activists. So you can imagine how difficult it must be. First of all, getting a visa to come to the UK takes forever. And then there are costs involved with that. And then there's the vaccine inequality. In a way, people in rural areas are still struggling to get vaccines. These are rural communities. And for them, it's just a completely different kind of world.
I can't deny that COP has some importance because it's not just world leaders, it is leading scientists and people who know the most about climate science. So definitely I think that it's good that there's a space that those voices are being heard. But the way that it's structured, I don't think is going to bring about justice. You don't have to look far to see that the UK has absolutely no intention of helping to create a just society anytime soon, and they're actively trying to push back on that. As we know throughout history, radical changes in society has come from direct action, and people putting their bodies and lives on the line and taking risks and making sacrifices. It has barely come from conference meetings and people of power sitting in a room and discussing things, because it's not in their best interest to change things. So I definitely feel that there are big limitations to how COP26 can tackle the climate crisis. I think the bigger changes are going to come from the people outside who are mobilising to be able to take care of this problem themselves. I do have accreditation for COP. Because it's in my home city, I will be attending some of the time. I don't have any hope that being inside is what's going to change anything.
It's just a conference of awareness. There's a lot of talk happening, but with awareness, has to always come action. And so it turns out this entire event, a really great marketing scheme for our world leaders, but nothing is really going on and happening, because when we get back home, it's the same thing. At the end of it all, one of our main realizations is that the solutions aren't at COP, they're in our frontline communities. After trying to find this space where we thought would be the quote-unquote future of our country, we realize that it actually is the opposite. Like, the future of our country is in these frontline communities that actually are creating these solutions without even understanding what climate change is. These are the solutions that we have to talk about and push forward, because these are the solutions that will actually save the climate, because they are creating concrete action for the people that need it most. And that's what we need to talk about, not just simply creating policies, but talking about these people that are already doing work without even looking for billions of dollars to do so, but just by understanding their culture and understanding tradition. This is what moves these communities forward. In the Philippines, we have this concept called the spirit of bayanihan, and it's something that basically talks about the innate spirit of community we have. And I think this is why we're so proud to be Filipino in this fight for the climate. It's because the sense of community has always banded us together, despite our leaders not seeing it. Us as a people are so banded together in hopes for a better future.
The ceremony we call Tree Blessings in Cambodia, and this ceremony led by monk. We the people hold the monk clothes around the tree, and then we tie it, and then the monk will provide the holy speech to that tree, and those trees cannot be cut down. It is very important in Cambodia, also all the Buddhism, because the Buddha was born under the tree, and he also dies under the tree. So we all respect the tree. In Cambodia, we celebrate the tree ceremony every year. I came to the UK to join the COP. We also have a campaign called to release our 6 friends who is in jail. We want to ask our government to honor its commitment in the Paris 2015. We, the organization, the activists, and the societies ask government to release our friends and give a fully right to participate to protect societies and Cambodia environment.
For what I've been seeing recently, COP26 now, for the people on the ground, yes, I have so much hope on grassroots initiatives, on indigenous initiatives. I'm always more of a field person work. I like going and doing more things on the ground where you can actually make a difference and see what's happening. I used to have a full-time job, but that didn't stop me from going out over the weekends as to volunteer. In one of the areas that we're working in Lamu, we did a small project, where we came with our friends and everybody donated and we were able to build a borehole, and the area just changed within a few months. In that sense, I have so much hope for the communities. I can't tell for sure. Maybe this time it's going to be different, but I still want to have optimism. There's so much attention to this COP more than ever. And, we have all these wonderful activists who are coming together. It can hopefully put pressure to bring about real meaningful change.
All my hopes lay around the coalition building and meeting amazing activists from all over the world, strengthening connections. I'm sure there are so many lessons that we can learn as campaigners from people who have been fighting this fight in a different part of the world with slightly different laws and slightly different experiences. I'm really excited to meet people that I can learn from, to test the waters of organising just as people. Getting involved in frontline struggles and local struggles gives you a deeper understanding of what the climate crisis actually is, and the things that make up the climate crisis can be broken down into these steps that you can actually take to make a tangible difference in your own community. People are fighting this all over the world in their own ways.
For many of these people in privileged positions in countries where they haven't even faced the worst of the climate crisis yet, now it makes so much more sense to see the disparity between the decisions made. It's because they're in this environment where they don't even feel the pain of the people in the front lines. And this disparity is what we have to change. The future of humanity is grounded in community, and that the revolution of everything that we've been looking for is within the spirit of people coming together to fight for the future that they want. Have to continue to create a culture for, because this is what is going to bring us systematic change. So I feel like in the end of the day, it's not really about amplifying people's voices, it's really about passing them the mic, because you don't know how many frontline communities are so knowledgeable about all these regenerative solutions that are being talked about in these conferences, but again are not being passed down, or like the mic isn't being passed to these people who actually practice it every single day. And I think that that's really important, like not only to hear their voices, but also to learn from them so we can also apply it in our daily life. It's understanding this selfless concept that we do coexist with other people, and not just coexisting within your own community, but in the entire world. And this is why the value of perspectives are so important to have in conversations, and that is the only way really we'll come out with inclusive discussions and diverse solutions that everyone can relate to and actually implement.
The European climate movement, we're not a threat to the system itself. Rather, we're more of like pushers, and that is not going to bring us liberation. What has worked for us is educating the community. I feel like educating people is powerful in that after understanding the systems, then just systems, they're able to question them. I feel like what upholds the status quo right now is the fact that people do not have enough knowledge to question the system at their own capacity. Of course, the change won't come from the leaders. It'll come from our own organizing, building the systems we actually want. Exposing the system at COP26, I'm sure there will be a lot of that. I wish the Queen was coming, but she cancelled. Colonialism, the main cause of the climate crisis, I'd have been there with my megaphone shouting that at the top of my voice. This is a time to listen to each other, sit together and strategize, connect, because this is the movement of change. This is not even the movement of change. This is the change that we are looking for.
COP fails, fuck, okay. But even if COP succeeds, we know that the solutions that are being proposed, like net zero, offsetting, carbon capture and storage, all of these are fundamentally based on the continued dispossession of people. Really, really big conversation that needs to happen. The possibility that the only solutions that we will get are going to be eco-fascist. The need to have this moment of like, young people are not going to stand for that. We will create the adaptation needs. Young people will lead.
This comes with capacity building on the grassroots level, the local level. This comes with world-changing movements that needed to happen maybe 20, 30 years ago, but we're trying to do it now.
not allowing ourselves to be co-opted. You're not here to make a career. You're here to fundamentally earn your place as part of those histories of resistance that are culturally appropriate to you and that are rooted in the geography and the calendar that you were born in, because that's all that matters. Sometimes people get the wrong idea that people in the global north don't have legacies of resistance or like don't have lineages. We didn't come from Instagram. We came from particular families with particular histories. Who are your people? Where do you come from? From those places, from how resilience was built in those cultures across everywhere, because there's pain everywhere. That's where we can root our activism.
We are an endangered species, but we sing no victim song. We are human and we are artists, and we know where our voices belong. We are here, we exist. I shake my fist with these words from my lips. My mind is set and my body is strong. I sing of a rebirth, no victim song.